Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I have recently returned from my fantastic honeymoon to Italy, which is also my first vacation in about 3 years, and I am definitely experiencing a case of the post-vacation blues. So what better way to do that than to relive and talk about it a little bit with you today. For our holiday, my husband and I went to Rome for 6 days and then took a train down to Naples, stayed there for 1 night, and then took a further train to the town of Sorrento where we stayed for 4 days. I did take quite a few photos and also some videos with an intention of doing a little bit of a travel vlog for you guys, but that's gonna take me a little bit of time to put together and we'll see if the footage is good enough. In the meantime, today I thought I would give you my top 10 travel tips for going to Italy / Rome, Naples, and Sorrento. Some of them will be talking about ways that you can save money or best ways to see certain things. Some of them will be more generic travel advice, and some of them will also cover places to eat and books to read while you're there. As an archaeologist and a lifelong pasta worshiper, I have been wanting to go to Italy for a very, very long time, but I've always put it off because I wanted to do it quote unquote properly, basically with enough money that I could stuff my face without having to worry about overspending. While I did not specialize in Roman archaeology at school, part of my degree did cover Rome, and I took quite a few classes in Roman archaeology and also art. So of course, when we went there, I had a whole huge list of places that I wanted to make sure I was able to go see. I also functioned as a semi-professional tour guide for my husband, who has no background in archaeology or history whatsoever, and I think that he really did appreciate that I was able to explain some stuff to him while we were there. This allowed us to do most of our trip without needing a tour guide. We also didn't really do a lot of audio guides at museum. In retrospect, there are some places that I would definitely recommend doing a tour, especially if you don't have a background in archaeology, because you're just not going to get the same experience. But definitely, I wouldn't say that you have to go on a tour to visit somewhere like Italy. It is definitely somewhere that's easy enough to visit on your own without needing the extra help of a tour company. Before we jump into things, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more videos from me and to show your support. Also, if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about my holiday, I've been posting lots of photos and links to places that we used over on Instagram at rachelalmond.digs. Okay, so my first tip is, I think, pretty essential and is one that we learned right away when we arrived, which is that you should always pack at least one spare change of clothes and your main toiletries in your carry-on bag. So we flew from Edinburgh to Rome Ciampino Airport on a Ryanair flight, which is the kind of budget short-haul carrier in Europe. And because we were going for an extended period of time, we paid extra to have checked bags instead of just having carry-on luggage. Right away when we landed, we had a problem because our bags got left in Edinburgh, which is not something that I would have normally expected to happen. We were at the airport with plenty of time. There wasn't like a huge lineup. We checked our bags correctly, etc., etc. It seems that what happened was, for whatever reason, only about half of the checked bags got loaded on the plane before we left, and the rest of them got left. So there was actually quite a big chunk of the flight that was waiting at the carousel for a very long time until they figured out that it had been left behind. And I'm fairly confident that this is largely to the huge labor shortage that is currently happening at airports, where they fired or laid off a significant portion of their workforce because of the pandemic, and now they have sold flights at pre-pandemic levels, but they haven't managed to replace the staff to be able to properly resource all those flights. So I think probably what just happened was that there just wasn't enough people to load all of our bags. Because I'm the kind of person that tends to over-prepare for things, I was really lucky in that I had spare shirts, underwear, and socks in my carry-on, which was a small backpack, as well as some basic toiletries, while my husband had only really packed a toothbrush and a spare shirt. We had both worn long trousers because it was cold in Edinburgh, with an intent of changing into shorts when we arrived, and we couldn't do that, and it was 30 degrees in Rome. He was wearing jeans as well, so it was extra hot. Luckily, they put a rush job on our luggage and it did arrive the next day, and we were able to go back to the airport and pick it up, but it was a whole thing, and you know, we were very uncomfortably hot the next day walking around Rome and doing things because we weren't just going to like give up on our whole trip because our luggage was not there. We also didn't feel like we needed to buy new clothes because it wasn't gonna take us that long to get our luggage. But yeah, definitely learned a lesson to make sure that anything that you absolutely need on the first couple days of your trip, have it in your carry-on just in case. And we are making a claim for the fact that the baggage was delayed, but we haven't heard back about that yet, so we don't know how much we're gonna get back for it at all. My second tip is to make an itinerary for your trip and book your tickets for attractions that you definitely want to see in advance. This is a tip that I've just stolen from the internet when I was researching from our trips, but a lot of the websites talked about how if you're doing this kind of thing on your own, you really need to book your tickets at least 2 weeks out for major tourist sites. So like in Rome, places like the Colosseum, Vatican museums, and this is because quite a few of them have time slots, so you need to make sure that you get the slot that you want to get in. It's not just like you show up and you buy a ticket anymore. Additionally, they do sometimes sell out their tickets for the day. So if you're planning to go see something and you show up and you haven't pre-booked your tickets, there is an opportunity that you could not get in. You also will probably have to wait in a very long line to buy your tickets. So it's a lot easier, trust me, to book them in advance, show up, go to the pickup line and just get your tickets. Tip number 3 is kind of related to number 2 in that I would definitely recommend looking into and buying multi-day tourist passes, so to speak. In Rome, this is called the Roma Pass, and you can buy either a 48-hour or a 72-hour version of the pass. And the way that it works is you get into the first 2 attractions on their list of places that they have a partnership with for free, and then for any other attractions that you see within your window of time, you get a reduced ticket entry. You also get to use all of the public transport in Rome free of cost. We bought the 72-hour pass and it was, I think, about 50 euros. So it definitely saved us like a good chunk of money to use it. For the public transport, we did use it to use the metro subway system a couple times for free, which was definitely quite helpful. Although we did spend most of our time in Rome walking all around Rome. Similarly, in Naples and Sorrento, we bought what's called the Campania Pass. So that covers the Campania region and it operates similarly to the Roma Pass. The one complaint that I would have about this though is that with the Campania Pass in particular, whatever the way that it's set up, it sent me our tickets for it because I bought it in advance via email, and then it asked me to put an app on my phone, and then I had to load the tickets onto my app, and then I would show that to people when we were at tourist sites or going through the train station. I think this is a good idea in theory, but in practice it was really annoying because I had both of our passes on my phone, so I would have to switch between 2 of them to show them to each guard, which could take some time because it was re-downloading it every single time. And every time that I opened the app, I had to put in all of my login details and sign back in to get access to the pass. And I found that quite annoying to have to do, especially when you're like underground and you maybe don't have like a great reception. If so, one tip that I would have that I would do differently for that is if you have a possibility to buy the physical copy of the card, do that instead. It is so much easier. The Roma Pass was just a card that you got that was activated when you scanned it on certain things, and it was so much easier to use. Tip number 4 is to get up early and go see things in the early morning / afternoon. So this tip applies in 2 ways, in that in the mornings in Rome at tourist spots, it is just less busy. So it is easier to enjoy things in the morning with less people around. And also the mornings are just cooler, so it is just a nicer environment to walk around and see things and not melt into the pavement while you're doing so. The way that my husband and I kind of structured our days was that we would go have breakfast in the morning and then go and do kind of like all of our touristy things. And then we would come back in the early afternoon, have a shower, have a bit of a siesta nap, and then we would kind of go out in the evenings once the massive heat of the day had kind of gone away. And tip number 5, we're halfway through. It may be slightly controversial, but it's to go out early and have your dinner. Some Italians will probably disagree with me about this, and obviously it also comes with the caveat of making sure that where you're going for dinner is actually open. But it seems like a lot of Italians like to eat dinner a little bit later in the evening than somewhere like the UK or Canada. So I would say about 8 o'clock is when most people show up for dinner. This is partly because there's this whole culture of an aperitivo, so you kind of go out for like appetizers and a drink before your main meal. A lot of the restaurants there will open between 7 or 7:30 if they're not open through the whole day. And all the good restaurants in Rome, usually, especially on peak days like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, will have bookings for reservations. So we didn't really ever make any bookings anywhere, and most days we were going out to try and find dinner between 6 and 6:30 and wandering around our neighborhood that we were in. But we did have it happen several times where we would rock up to places kind of slightly early for the dinner rush and ask if we could have a table. They were fully booked, but more often than not, they just squeezed us in and we would be in and out in about 45 minutes with our dinner. Now, being in the ambiance of a huge dinner crowd isn't particularly important to my husband or I. We just wanted to have food. So this worked out really well for us and meant that we just kind of avoided the dinner rush. We would get our food fairly quickly and we ate like kings almost the entire time that we were there. Tip number 6 is also related to food, which is to, if possible, depending on what your booking is for your hotel, is that you should definitely look into just getting a takeaway breakfast in the mornings. So we stayed at a guest house, which isn't the same as a hotel. You know, there wasn't like a 24-hour manned reception. It did have an offer of like a little of breakfast that you could get where they would set it out in the mornings. It was like a little breakfast buffet and they had a little room, but it was €8 per person, and we decided not to take them up on that. And instead what we would do is get up in the morning, go outside. There was a cafe just around the corner from us. We would go there, order 2 cafe lattes and 2 pastries to go, and then we would just go and eat them in a local park and have our breakfast while we were people watching. And that for 2 people cost us €7 each morning, which is a definite cost saving. That is assuming that you would like to participate in a Roman breakfast. They don't do like things like a full English breakfast, or what I think a lot of like Canadians and Americans think of as breakfast. If like you grab a coffee and a sugary pastry and you kind of go on your way. In Italy, if you sit in at a restaurant to eat, they charge you a cover charge for sitting in. So it's always going to be cheaper to take away and go somewhere and eat rather than to sit in somewhere. I wouldn't say the cover charge is a lot. It's usually like a couple euros, but still, it's money that you can save if you want to. Okay, tip number 7 is books to read. So if you've been here for a while, you'll notice that one of my kind of secondary loves in my life is books, as is also demonstrated by the nice big shelf of books behind me. And my holiday was a perfect opportunity for me to get lots of quality reading time in. One of my favorite genres of books to read is historical fiction. And I found myself when I was in Rome really craving to read about these places that I was seeing every day. So I deliberately read a couple books based in Italy and Rome. And it was a really cool experience because having seen those places in real life, it just made the book come to life and kind of visualize, I think, better in my mind what people were describing, because I had seen it, at least in some ways, in real life. If you would like to have a similar experience to me, these are the books that I read while I was on my trip. I started off with Cleopatra's Daughter by Michelle Moran, which is a novel about Cleopatra Selene, the daughter of that Cleopatra, the 7th of Egypt. And the plot line of the book basically concerns what happens to Cleopatra Selene and her brothers after Augustus conquers Egypt and brings them back home to Rome. The next 2 books that I read was the Borgia's duology by Kate Quinn. So the first book is called The Serpent and the Pearl, and the second book is called The Lion and the Rose. And this is set a little bit later, and again is focused and largely set in the city of Rome, and it follows 3 main characters, a cook named Carmelina, a dwarf named Leonello, and the very famous mistress of the Borgia Pope, Alessandro VI. Her name was Giulia La Bella Farnese. Carmelina and Leonello are fictional characters in the book, but I am so happy that they were included because it was kind of, it allowed the author to not only talk about aristocratic life, but also kind of like lower class servant life at that point in time. And she did an absolutely fantastic job with all of the research that she did for this book, and also presenting what I at least found to be a really plausible kind of storyline for what happened with the Borgias, because if you haven't heard of them before, there's a lot of bad press around them regarding, you know, incest and murder and all these kind of really shady things that happened during their reign. I think she did a really good job of presenting, you know, what actually happened and then how that got twisted into what a lot of people think about them, and was ultimately a story about how power corrupts, especially the kind of like absolute power a pope would have had in Rome at that point in time. One of the best aspects of the Kate Quinn books was the cook, through the cook Carmelina. She told this amazing story about medieval food and recipes and what these people kind of would have eaten, and it's based upon a medieval book of recipes that we have from a cook called Bartolomeo. So having just that extra layer of like depth and color to the book like really brought it to life for me personally. I also started reading, but didn't have time to finish before the end of the trip, The Vatican Princess by C.W. Gortner, another Borgia focused book, but it focuses on telling the story from the perspective of Lucrezia Borgia. And this one was good, but it's obviously a different take on the situation. And after reading the Kate Quinn books, it's just, I'm sorry, it's just not as good. Okay, so tip number 8 is don't necessarily respond to people asking you if you speak English unless you can clearly tell that they are a tourist who is just looking for maybe some information that you can help with. I did have it happen several times where someone would ask me something and it was a tourist, and that was fine. We did have a couple of experiences that were on the other end of the scale. I don't know if I'd necessarily call them negative, but they definitely weren't like nice experiences. The one that stands to mind was that in Naples, we were traveling to Herculaneum to go see it, and so we were taking the Circumvesuviana train. I had asked a train like station employee which train we needed to be on. He told us a train, he told us a platform. We were waiting on the platform for the train. It was about to arrive when someone came up to my husband and was asking if he spoke English, and my husband just like knee-jerk said, yes, what do you need? And the guy, without saying anything, was just like, oh no, don't take this train. This train's not for you. Next one, which was not correct. And then my husband was like, oh, okay. And he's like, okay, you give me money? And he was asking my husband for money for giving him this information. No way we were gonna give him money. So luckily for us, the train had just arrived. So we just like walked away and got in the train, and it wasn't an issue. And that's not to say that it would have been an issue, but it kind of left a bad taste in our mouths that, you know, it kind of felt like someone was trying to scam us, especially because they were asking for money for telling us incorrect information. Experiences kind of soured us and taught us a lesson to kind of like not respond when people ask us unless we can tell that it's a tourist desperately asking for help. Tip number 9 is to do an e-bike tour. So my husband is a really keen cyclist. We have many cycles in our flat. I'm very casual about cycling, but I do own a bike because my husband enjoys cycling so much. We actually did 2 cycling related activities while we were there. In Rome, we rented bikes from Around a Roman Bike. Definitely recommend those guys. They were very helpful. We just rented regular bikes, and then we went to the cycle along the Appian Way, which is a very famous Roman road that goes from Rome to Brindisi and still has parts of the Roman road left on it. It's really cool as well because Rome is clearly very cycle friendly as a city. The Tiber River is quite far down from where the city is, but the sides of it have basically been converted into cycle and walking paths. So it's really beautiful to cycle down along the Tiber, and then there's lots of cycle paths along the city. If I had to do that again, I would have rented either a mountain bike or an e-bike, because yeah, there were definitely some hills there. As a casual cyclist, they weren't too hard for me, but I would have appreciated them not being hard at all. And the Appian Way is mostly fine, but parts of it where I think where it's like a Roman road and it hasn't been super maintained, there's these huge gaps between all the rocks on the road, so it's not smooth anymore, and there's not really cycle paths along the side, so I had to like get off and walk the bike at parts of it, so you can't really cycle the Appian Way in the way that you think you can. In Sorrento, we did a food and wine e-bike tour, and we definitely just right out the gate, we're gonna get e-bikes for that because Sorrento is very hilly. It's on a cliffside. So yeah, no way that I was going to be doing that without the assistance of an electric motor. But we did this through Enjoy Bike Sorrento, and it ended up being probably one of the best experiences we had on our trip. So highly recommend if you're kind of a semi-active person and you're looking for a tour that's like a little bit off the beaten path and is not gonna have you just like sitting in a coach all day driving from spot to spot. We started out in the middle of Sorrento, and for whatever reason, it was quite a private tour. It was just my husband and I and another couple and the tour guide. We only paid, I think it was about 80 euros each per person to do it. We ended up doing a 2 to 3 hour cycle along the coast of Sorrento. We kind of went off the main roads and we got taken along all the back roads, which are essentially converted donkey tracks, so they don't have tons of cars racing down them. And we went through a lemon grove. We stopped at a couple of different spots with like beautiful views of the coast and of Capri. And then at the top of Massa Lubrenzi, we stopped and had coffee at a little coffee shop with a beautiful view of Capri. And then the tour ended in a small town where we were picked up in these little like tri-scooter things and taken to a local farm where they did a olive oil tasting and then a demonstration of local cheese making, which took us through the processes of making several different cheeses and ended with mozzarella, and we got to taste each different kind of cheese, and then at the end they were giving us pieces of mozzarella with some of the olive oil, including truffle oil, and it was amazing. It was delicious. The tour guide was funny. The farm had tons of cats and dogs for you to pet and gush over while you were waiting for things to happen. And overall, it was just like an absolutely fantastic experience that I would recommend to everyone if you're in the region. My only caveat to it would be that I would not do this if you are not comfortable riding a bicycle, or if it's not something you maybe do semi-regularly, because you know, there is traffic on part of the route that might make you a bit nervous. You definitely need to be familiar with how to change gears, because you still need to do that even if you have an electric motor on the bike, and the downhills can get pretty fast. Like I was going up to 30 kilometers an hour, I saw on my little speedometer when we were going on some of those downhills. Okay, tip number 10, I have saved the best for last, and that is all of the places that you should eat. We had such amazing food while we were in Italy. It is an expectation. Luckily, because we did a bunch of cycle tours and walking, we didn't manage to put on a lot of extra weight because of it, because we definitely did not eat healthily. Like I said, we had a pastry pretty much every day for breakfast, and we just stuffed ourselves full of pizza and pasta. As I said, I am a pasta worshiper. I love it. It's like one of my favorite things to eat, and my husband loves pizza as well. So we were both in food heaven while we were there. So I can be a bit of a picky eater. I, you know, don't particularly like seafood. There's like quite a few vegetables that I'm not super keen on, and I don't really like super smelly cheese, but luckily this wasn't a problem. While I was in Italy, I did stick to kind of like the basic foods, so like cacio e pepe, tomato-based pasta, ravioli, pizza, margherita pizza, etc. But all of it was still delicious. So I didn't feel like I missed out on the experience because I was, you know, not trying the more exotic stuff. Like I said, our entire trip was delicious. We only had 1 or 2 meals that like weren't great. But I thought I would pick out a couple of the highlights for you to recommend if and when you guys end up going to Italy. In Rome, the one thing I would recommend trying if you're there, if you really want like the Roman experience, is the 4 pastas of Rome. I had quite a bit of cacio e pepe, which is just pasta with cheese and pepper. Places that you should definitely eat in Rome when you go there are, okay, I'm gonna have to read this out because I cannot say it dead on in the camera. Borgacciana Pastificio Artigianale. I'm gonna put that below here. It's a very small like artisan pasta factory that has like a little restaurant bit at the front. It's located really close to St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City. We ended up going to it on our way back from seeing the Vatican museums, and it was amazing. It's like a little hole in the wall kind of place. I had spinach and ricotta ravioli in tomato sauce, and it was the best I've ever had. It was a really like local experience, as I would describe it, even though it was full of tourists. Also in Rome, we have the Orecchieteria Banfi, which was a local restaurant close to where we were staying that specializes in orecchiette pasta dishes. This is one of those places where we kind of like rocked up at 6:30 and we're like, hey, can we get a seat? And they were like, come back at 7 and we'll squeeze you in. To start, we had a pizza fritta, which is like a deep fried pizza pocket basically, but better. And then we each had a main dish that involved orecchiette pasta. I had like a pesto thing. The last place that I recommend stopping by at in Rome is the Mercato Testaccio. So this is a local market that was recommended to us by the bike rental guys in Rome. And the guy said that it was the best street food in Rome. I haven't tried a lot of street food in Rome, but I still believe him. We stopped there on the way back for our lunch and just got some pasta, which was delicious. There was tons of stalls and different places that you could order something to eat, and then like little food areas that you could go and eat them. The only thing I will say about it though is that it is not open in the afternoons, so it closes at 2:30 every day, so it's not the kind of place you can go for dinner. It's really only for lunch, and it does focus as a market, so if you're really lucky and you are somewhere where you can cook, you could like go there and buy like artisan homemade fresh pasta to go and have later that day for dinner. And oh, I hope I can do that one day. As I said, we were only in Naples for one night, but we received multiple recommendations from different people to try the one restaurant that we went to, and I'm going to pass that recommendation on to you because it was magnificent. We ate at Gino e Toto Sorbillo on Tribunali Street. We were told by multiple people that you usually have to line up for hours to get in there. Like one person said, if you want to eat at 9, you have to be there at 7. We rocked up at 6:30 and got seated right away. I got the margarita buffalo DOP, and the reason I chose it is because it was made with like all local ingredients. So like local mozzarella cheese, local tomatoes, probably grown on the slopes of Vesuvius. And also it had a Parmigiano Reggiano sprinkled on top in addition to the mozzarella. And it came with a beautiful little ball of mozzarella just like dunked right in the middle. And it was fantastic. In Sorrento, we again had several different recommendations. The place that we ended up eating on our first night is called Da Franco Food Philosophy. Once again, I had a margarita pizza. It was delicious. My husband, I think, had a calzone and really enjoyed that as well. Another night we went to the Inn Bufalito, and as implied by its name, it specializes in buffalo food products. So I think my partner had like a buffalo ragu, and I had gnocchi sorrentina. We're in Sorrento. The gnocchi were perfectly light and fluffy. There was a little bit of mozzarella mixed into it, and the tomato sauce was divine. Probably my favorite meal was when we went to this next place, which is the Samola Pasta Bar. Found this place on Google before we went, and I was like, I need to go here. I have several pictures of me standing out front. We shared a starter that was essentially each different type of pasta that they serve at the restaurant deep fried and then served with sauces to try. And then I had another ravioli dish for my main, but it was a mix of a bunch of different cheeses. The last place I'm going to mention was where we ate on our last night in Sorrento. We were lucky enough to go there because we went to a like secluded local swimming spot, which I will talk about and you will see in my vlog. And we met an Italian couple while we were swimming, and we had like a nice chat with them, and they were very kind in inviting us then to come and have dinner with them. So we went with them that night to Antonio Esposito Pizza e Cucina, and we had like, I guess like the true Italian experience while we were there. We had pizza fritta, again, like a deep fried pizza, but not as greasy as you think it is, for an appetizer between all of us. And I had a margarita pizza. It was all delicious. It was amazing. We had wine afterwards because we were in the marina. I think on Saturday nights they have fireworks displays, so there were fireworks after. It was just like a perfect way to sign off our trip and our time in Sorrento. Okay guys, that's everything for today. I'm sure I've taken up enough of your time making you all really jealous of my trip, but really I just wanted to put this list together for you so that when you're planning your trip to Italy, it can make it a little bit easier, and also giving you a couple recommendations for how to best best enjoy your trip while you're there. If you like this video and you found the advice helpful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and like this video. It really helps with the algorithm and promoting my stuff. If you'd like to see more from me and hear more, a little bit more of my trip in future and more about archaeology, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you get notified when I put out new videos. And lastly, don't forget to go and show your support on Instagram and give me a follow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!